Hey, good morning, everyone. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
everybody. Good morning,
Good
Victoria. Good morning.
morning.
Good morning, Felicia. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, good, good. I see 11 people currently, 11, right? And let me just quickly check how many people were in today's forum. Last time I checked, there were like 9 people. Now, let's see. That's Okay, it's 10, right? 10 people. So at least one person here, one person in the, uh, one person still in the collaborate session still needs to sign into today's forum, right? Uh, Keep in mind, unless your name is here, you're not present, right? This is the only proof of your physical proof of your attendance. Now, hopefully, you may have noticed. Quiz one is over. Of course, you can access your own record uh, on the blackboard, but question is where you stand in the entire class. Where do you stand? Uh, that's the big question, right? And how you're doing compared to other people. So I posted or updated the summary statistics here. Quiz one result, right? And if you click on that, and let's see, if you click on that, I have already downloaded. I have that file, of course. Um, all righty. So if you click on that link, you'll be downloading this file. And two things. First of all, of course, there's quiz one data, and there is weighted average. And the weighted average is clearly by the rules the policy um, set forth in the syllabus. Your semester grade will depend on the weighted average. Weighted average is basically comes from 20%, right? 20% of the weight in each exam is 20% in quiz one, 20% in quiz two, 25% in midterm, and 25% in final. And then the attendance, right? Attendance and participation. And these attendance and participation points are all different because people have, different attendance and, different participation levels, right? Different participation. Um, every time I asked questions, those who answered gave me, at least average answer got 0.25 for all that. This is the basically the accumulation of all that so far, as of October. Uh, as of October for you guys, this October 6th. For Tuesday class, you know, uh, Tuesday, Thursday class, it's already as of October 12th. So um, basically, by weighted average in descending order, right? The highest maximum was this 21.72. The mean of all of the weighted average was 11.24. Um, the minimum was 0 point. So this includes people that didn't take quiz one for some that has participation and attendance, right? So the because of that, mean is between this and this, right? The mean is 11.27. So this is about the mean, right? Mean of the weighted average. And then there are people. These are people who have disappeared. They have zero attendance whatsoever. So most likely they think they dropped out of class, but by not coming to class. They have never attended, so they think they automatically dropped out. No, unless you take action, your record remains, right? Your record, you remain on the roster unless you officially withdraw, right? Just like you have to do that through the registrar. So most likely these people are non-existent, in class anymore. Of course, these are 4 sections, right? There's the pooled data of 4 sections, not just your section, right? And then so there are 76 people that are participating in class one way or the other. And of those 76 people, 26 haven't 26 didn't take the quiz one. Okay. The total for weighted average total was 75, right? Total head count 75. For quiz one only, quiz one alone, mean was 73, right? 73, 71, almost 72. Maximum 100, minimum 36. The head count was 49. Okay. Well, for whatever reason you didn't take, quiz one, there's no excuse, right? I mean, it was pre-announced, right? It was pre-announced already like a week before, and you had like 1 week to remind yourself of this, and then you had 2 hours to do it. You had 3-day window and had 2 hours to do it, and if you didn't, you have no excuse, right? Of course, some people might have had some emergency, right? But then if you had an emergency, at least you could, send me an email. Okay, at this, I hear a lot of dings, you're probably typing into the chat box, but you have to keep in mind, right? I can't see what's on the until I take a look. How do we access the data? Well, I showed you. It's in the assignments folder. It's in the assignments folder. Okay. This is the thing. Okay. It says quiz one results with attendance as of October 12th, right? Okay, you guys, you guys sorted it out. You guys sorted it out, between yourselves. All righty. So, someone was saying something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when is the midterm?
there's no way I can pinpoint the exact date, but the midterm will be after we finish topic 3. Okay, after we finish topic 3, and the topic 3, we are already into topic 3, right? And we go by, this is the main lecture, so we go by the main lecture, and the currently the topic 3 is scheduled to be over by October 25th, so it looks like it's going to be most likely the weekend of October, that week, the weekend of that week. So most likely it will be on Friday 29th, and you will have 3-day window, right? And it will be on Connect, right? It's not going to be on the Blackboard. It's going to be on Connect. So everyone must have their active Connect access code. Okay. Alrighty. So without further ado, let's let's wrap up our topic 2, right? Financial statements. So so in our last class, we pretty much wrapped up everything about income statement, right? And I told you profit and earnings mean the same thing, because the name, if you subtract all the expenses from income, then it's called operating profit. I told you, rather than operating income, operating profit is a better term for businesses, or EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, right? And then because it's earnings before paying interest and taxes, it's self-explanatory that what comes next is interest. You pay interest because you have interest. This is interest charge that you owe, not the interest income. You have interest payment because you have debt, right? You have debt because you have a business, and to raise startup capital, you borrowed money, right? And it's inevitable. The capital for starting up your business, comes from either equity or debt. And I'm not. It's going to be repeated over, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I mean, at this point, so you pay out interest, right? So look at the how interest is calculated. I mean, it says F5. What is F5? So if you go to F5, there is interest, right? And how was this interest calculated? It is F12 times L27. F12 is what? Total non-current liabilities, meaning it's long-term debt, right? Long-term debt times, so we have, long-term debt of bonds payable and mortgage, right? And then L27 is the interest rate. And how did I come to this interest rate? It's just I used an assumption of 2.5% annual interest rate, divided by 4. Why divided by 4? Because basically all financial statements are based on quarterly statement. They are all quarterly statements. I mean, Then there will be annual statement, but the basic operating cycle or operating period is quarter, right? All businesses, basically operate by, quarterly, operate quarterly. All statements are updated quarterly, right? And I mentioned this. October is called earnings season. It's not only October, right? October, every first month of every quarter is called earnings season. Why? Companies report their earnings, right, in the first month of the next quarter. That means, it's quite obvious. You cannot. We have entered the fourth quarter. So what they release, the data they release in October, cannot be the fourth quarter data. Anyone with any common sense can, easily understand that. You can only have fourth quarter data only after the fourth quarter is over. So if in October, if they release data, earnings data, then that must be, pertaining to the third quarter, right? Because third quarter is over, so they have, now compiled their data, and they are starting to release it. They started to release it in October. So just like that, July is also earnings season, because that's the earnings data from the second quarter is released in July, the first month of the third quarter, right? July, August, September. And then the same thing. April is the earnings season, because first quarter earnings data is released in April. That means fourth quarter earnings data will be released in January of the next year. Make sense? So the base. Someone said something. The microphone is doing, audio is, somebody's just like, zapping through, somebody's voice is.
It makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And also you need to you'll need to understand that without any warning, if you say something, it's like, it sounds like somebody's voice just zapping through the audio system, right? So please,
I mean, what happened is that I pressed the audio button too fast. That's why.
Yeah, probably, you turn on your microphone and then give it some time, and then, speak slowly. And because usually, if you say something just out of blue, then I'm in the middle of saying something at the same time, so I hear my voice mostly, right? Because as a speaker, usually you hear your voice first, right? And then if someone says something and it just zaps through, it zaps through the audio, very quickly. So anyway, yeah.
Out. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It cancels out each other's voices.
Yeah, because overlapping voices are overlapping.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so the basic operating period is quarterly, right? So that's why I used this assumption. And what was that? The assumption was all the rates are basically annual, right? So I assume 2.5% annual interest rate and times 1/4, so quarterly, right? But 2.5% 20% assumption is also arbitrary. Why? Now, first, think about it. Bonds, interest rate on the coupon rate on the bond, and the mortgage interest rate cannot be the same thing. I mean, they may or may not be the same. Most likely, they won't be the same thing because bonds, you sell bonds. The company sold bonds to raise capital, and they sold bonds for like $2.25 million, right? And these are two separate borrowings. So the interest rate most likely are not the same. They got the mortgage loan, so the interest rates won't be the same. But for this example, that would be too. I didn't want to make I didn't want to make this example too complicated. It's already complicated enough. So I assumed just 2.5% weighted average. Weighted average. In other words, whatever the rate coupon rate on this is, and whatever the interest rate on this is, I assume the weighted average. Of course, because this is bigger in proportion, right? So the weighted average is mostly affected by this rate, but I simply assumed weighted average of 2.5%. Okay, so that's how the interest was calculated, and then after paying interest, right? Then from EBIT, since you have paid interest, I will have to drop out, right? I will have to drop out. So it becomes EBT, earnings before taxes, which is exactly taxable income, right? Because it's earnings before taxes. But we know it will only become negative, right? Because we already have negative EBIT or operating profit. And then, subtracting interest from that will only make it negative, more negative, right? But then you don't have any taxes to pay. You don't have any taxes to pay because you have no taxable income. I mean, negative taxable income, right? That means you incurred loss. With loss, you don't pay taxes. But so this is what some people do. Some people just do it, oh, this is Excel, so Excel will, because I'm doing it on Excel, it must be correct. No, Excel is only as correct as your logic. If your logic is incorrect, then Excel will just, Excel will just, put out.
Microsoft Excel would be pointless at that point.
No. Well, no, yeah. I mean, if your logic is incorrect, but as long as you have the correct logic, Excel is a very, very powerful and useful tool. Now, so what I'm talking about is something like this. People just mindlessly, without thinking, just mindlessly do a mechanical calculation. Mechanical calculation will be, tax rate is 35%, so this is taxable income. Taxable income times the tax rate, that's got to be the taxes. So you do that. But then, this is a negative number, so you multiply it by 35%, you'll still end up with a negative number, right? You'll end up with a negative number. But this is, taxes. But then think about it. Can there be negative taxes? Can there be negative taxes?
No.
If you don't have no, of course not. If you don't have any taxable income, then your taxes will be zero. Your taxes will be simply zero. You don't have to pay any taxes. If your taxable income is zero or negative, no taxes will be imposed, right? But some people just calculate this just mechanically. Machines don't have mind, so right. So in other words, just calculating it mechanically is just calculating it mindlessly, and then they just and then they do it here, and then saying that means what? You are stating basically you are stating that your taxes are negative. But then that sounds like what? If your taxes are negative, does that mean IRS owes you this amount? Positive tax is what you owe IRS. Then negative tax is right what IRS owes you. But is that possible? I mean, no, of course not. That's
That
completely
would be impossible.
yeah.
That would
Not
be
only
impossible.
impossible, but that's senseless. That's a nonsense, isn't there? Simply a nonsense, isn't that right? Simply a nonsense. Because
That's correct.
if you don't have any taxes to pay, then it's zero. If your taxable income is zero or negative, your taxes will be zero, not negative, right? So how do you make Excel automatically do that? So uh, this is probably the first time I'm talking about the if command. If command is a very handy tool. It's very useful and handy tool, and I use this for almost everything. I mean, and it does all, without me, the point of using Excel is to automate the whole process, right? The automation is the whole idea. And to automate it, all you need to do is you need to provide logic first. You need to provide logic to Excel. Then everything will be, executed. Excel will execute all those logics automatically, right? So that you won't have to do it, manually, enter those numbers yourself. So all of these numbers were not manually entered. I mean, other than the highlighted cells. I'm talking about the highlighted cells because the highlighted cells are the solution cells. Non-highlighted cells are initial input data. Of course, initial input data has to be there. I mean, you have to manually either download it or manually input it because it's initial data. What can you do? But then solution cells, you have to uh, uh, you just provide logic in the solution cells and let Excel execute that command, execute that logic automatically. So here, what I used was, now if, that means if J28 is, this, right? Taxable income. If that is positive, right? Greater than zero, if it is positive, of course, you need to do, L29 times J28. In other words, the tax L29 was the tax rate times J28. Only if it is positive, right? Second comma, that means otherwise. Otherwise, just leave it zero. Leave it as zero, right? Put zero there. Otherwise means the opposite case. So the opposite case is when taxable income is zero or negative, right? Because the conditional statement is if J28, the taxable income, is positive, right? That's the only that's the conditional. That's the conditional clause. And if that is the case, then so if it is positive, otherwise means zero or negative, right? So the first comma means then this is what you do. Second comma means otherwise. So if it is negative or zero, then just leave it as zero. Therefore, Excel automatically picked zero there, right? Put zero there automatically. Okay, and if this is positive, it will execute this command, right? It will execute this command if it is positive. But since that wasn't positive, is picking, it puts 0 in there. That way, we can avoid nonsense. Okay, we can avoid nonsense. And then finally, net profit or EAT, earnings after taxes. Now it's after paying taxes. So then EAT, earnings after taxes, will be from the EBIT, right, or operating profit, subtract interest and taxes, right? So from J25, I subtract the sum of these two, J27 and J29. Of course, there will be no change. It will be exactly this, right? So in this example, this company incurred loss this quarter. But hopefully next quarter it will end up with profit. But here, so we arrived at the profit or loss. So once again, I told you income statement is also called a profit and loss statement, profit and loss. And then income statement is basically describing the operating activity. So what is an operating activity? Instead of a formal definition, what operating activity is from income statement. Every activity, every step from here, right, from sales revenue. Oops, what is? Okay, from sales revenue all the way to from sales revenue to operating a profit. That's operating activity. In other words, all the businesses, think about it, they will have to sell something. Businesses must sell something, right? That's their primary source of income, and that's their operation, right? They have to sell something. And then subtract expenses, right? Why? Because this is what they are after, right? You subtract expenses from income because you want to maximize your operating profit, right? I've been telling you, all businesses, the goal is to maximize profit. Also, it's also paraphrased as maximize shareholder wealth or shareholder value, because eventually you want to you have to pay out interest, you have to pay taxes, and eventually you have to arrive at net profit. And so the goal is to maximize net profit. But to maximize net profit, first you will have to maximize your operating profit, right? And this net profit belongs to the shareholders. So if you maximize profit, that's maximizing shareholder value or shareholder wealth. Okay? So that is operating activity. And then all businesses engage in three types of activities. What are those three activities? First is operating activity, of course, operating activity. Second, investing activity. Third, financing activity. And the investing activity and financing activities are all described in the balance sheet. So we're going to move on to the balance sheet. Excuse me a second. Now let's think about the balance sheet, right? And I told you at the beginning that the income statement and balance sheet serve different purposes. And the purpose of income statement, we already know. I already told you, is to the purpose of income statement is to describe or explain the process leading to profit, the process leading to profit, right? Which is called operating activity, right? Now, it could be profit or loss, but again, a loss is just negative profit, right? Loss is just negative profit. So to say, the purpose of income statement is to describe the process leading to profit, right? That is enough, right? That's sufficient. You don't have to say profit or loss. Now, the purpose of balance sheet is to describe or explain the capital structure. Capital structure. And what's the capital structure? And some people might say, oh, isn't it about assets and how assets are comprised, what assets are comprised of, and what liabilities and equity are comprised of. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. But let's start at the beginning. Before assets, you have to raise capital first of all, right? Before any asset, you must raise capital for the asset. So first, let's assume you're trying to start up a computer manufacturing business, right? And like Dell, computer manufacturing business, it's manufacturing. Most of all manufacturing basically requires plant and equipment, right? Isn't that right? That's the characteristics. That's a very salient characteristics, very conspicuous, distinguishing characteristics of manufacturing, right? The characteristics that distinguishes manufacturing from retail, right? Or service industries. Why? Without plant and equipment, there can be no manufacturing, right? And plant and equipment costs, a lot of, a huge capital. I mean, especially if it is, something like, high tech, like computer manufacturing, right? The plant and equipment would cost not just tens of millions of dollars, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Of course, there are some low-tech, low entry barrier manufacturing, right? Low entry barrier. What would be the, in other words, low-tech, low capital requirement, right? Entry barrier is basically, entry barrier into an industry is mainly determined by two factors: technology and capital, right? Think about it. If it requires a high tech, and capital requirement would be very high as well, because you cannot start high tech from your own garage. I mean, in the old days, in 1970s, that was possible. And Bill Gates and Steve Jobs started to build personal computers by hand, manually build the computers in their father's garage or in their father's basement. That was 1976. That was possible. But nowadays, you cannot build, you cannot, if you have a technology for building a mobile phone, that requires already a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. It requires clean room, and so that you will have to enter the facility after getting air showered and put on this like biohazard suit, right? Because even one speck of dust on the chip would ruin the whole thing. Now, of course, in most manufacturing, it would have high entry barrier. Of course, there are some businesses, some manufacturing that would have low entry barrier. Something like, think about it, rubber band, or paper clip, right? The plant that makes paper clip or rubber bands, it wouldn't require. That's not such a high tech, right? It wouldn't have high capital requirement, right? Because rubber band factory, how much capital would it require? Rubber band factory. Huh? But if you're starting up a computer manufacturing, most of all, you will need plant and equipment, building and land, which are called, physical assets, which are called long-term assets, fixed assets, physical assets, or real assets, right? So let's say it costs about $10 million. It costs $10 million for plant and equipment, just for plant and equipment and building and land. Okay? And without that, so that's, I talked about, we discussed, what sunk cost is, right? Sunk cost, remember? Sunk cost is the initial investment. And something like in manufacturing, you have to, you cannot start the business without initial investment. And the initial investment is the sunk cost, because you have to build the plant, right? You have to have the building, and you have to have the land. I mean, the plant and building are not the same thing. Building could be office building, right? And of course, you would need a piece of land to put your plant and office building on it. And in the plant, there must be, you must put in production equipment, right? So let's say that cost, so the initial investment is 10 million. So then how do you raise that 10 million? How do you raise that 10 million? Well, theoretically, two things you can do. You can go to the bank. You can go to the bank, try to get a loan. But realistically, in reality, it's almost impossible to get a loan as a startup, right? Why? Who's going to lend you like even 50% of the 10 million? Who's going to lend you even 5 million? Who's going to lend 5 million to a startup business that doesn't even have any track record and that doesn't have any collateral to put up? In other words, if you have like $5 million house and $5 million worth of luxury cars, right? Bentley, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, or let's say you have luxury cars, all in total value of 5 million, and a house of 5 million, and you can put up all of that as collateral. Actually, even if you put up all of that as collateral, you can probably get up to 80% of the collateral value. You can get a loan up to only about 80% maximum. So in reality, it's not going to be possible. But hypothetically, let's say you are able to get the loan. Why? First of all, mortgage is possible. I mean, but you are and look at this dollar amount of mortgage, 3.5 million. That 3.5 million transformed exactly into building and land, right? You see 3.5 million and 3.5 million here. So that means, yeah, because you're buying a building, right? Buying land, that can be put up as collateral. So you can probably get a loan because now, building and land is self-collateralized. But then you still need 6 million for plant and equipment. So part of it, you sold bonds. Of course, in reality, this is not possible in reality because you're just a startup. You don't have any track record. You don't even have anything. How can you sell bonds? I mean, you are not accepted in the bond market or stock market. You're not listed in the stock market, so you cannot even sell stocks, right? So in reality, that's not possible. But hypothetically, let's say you sold bonds, and that was 2.25 million. Of course, 2.25 million out of this 6 million was then funded by bond, and then the rest of the 6 million must be funded by equity. So they sold, they got equity. They sold stocks, hypothetically only. It's not possible in reality. $4 million. But in reality, so what do they do? I mean, if you have a startup, how do you raise capital? Well, first of all, you'll have to find an investor, a venture capital. A venture capital is also called angel investor, angel. Venture capital, think about it, is called venture capital because they are literally taking the risk, right? They are like on an adventure, right? If you're on an adventure, there's a lot of risk. They are willing to take the risk. And how do you meet those, venture capitals? Well, you have to go to the conventions. You have to participate in these, technology conventions, business, conventions, or trade fair. You have to open up a booth there, and that's your, first line of, investor relations or public relations. That's your public relations, outpost, right? You open up a booth at a convention. And usually at those conventions, that's a meat market. Meat market in this sense means, market where people meet. Venture capitals meet entrepreneurs, right? And usually venture capitals consist of, basically, finance professionals and technology professionals. First of all, why? Bank has finance professionals, but bank cannot assess the technology you have, right? Bank doesn't have the bank doesn't have the people, specialists in technology. So bank cannot assess that. They will just simply, always require collateral just to be on the safe side. So you will never get a loan from a bank. But venture capitals consist of people who are finance professionals and technology professionals, scientists and engineers. And they go to the, this trade fairs and conventions, and then meet all these, entrepreneurs that have set up their booth there and assess their technology, their potentials, and then if they find potentials in certain entrepreneurs, then they will invest. Okay, and you must have watched TV shows like Shark Tank, right? Has anybody watched that show, Shark Tank? I just watched once or twice, but not ever, never. Not very. Not, but once or twice, but never since.
I have
Anyone
heard
ever?
that show, but only seen it like once. But
Yeah, but you may not watch it all the time. I don't have time to watch it. But I just, while flipping channels, that show has been around for almost like at least 20 years, I believe. And what is that show about? Shark Tank. Huh? It's basically, entrepreneurs, presenting their business model, business idea, and matching the entrepreneurs with the venture capital, the funders, whoever wants to, right? But basically, no, not everyone can be on that show. So basically, in the convention, right? Yeah, pitching their business for a loan, or yeah, that's right. Um, who said that? Yeah, Jordan. Yeah, entrepreneurs pitching their business. That's not there, right? That's there is something over there, right? Pitching their business for loan and or investment. Yeah, you're right, Jordan. Right? Uh, they sell equity. Yeah, you're right. In their business, right? Yeah, you're right. You're both right. Um, Inviting investors, in other words, inviting the equity investors. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So Kenny, you're right, both of you. So Jordan and Kenny, you both got 0.25 for for pitching in your contribution. Okay. All right. Basically, conventions are places where you pitch your business model and business ideas. So let's say they raised $10 million, of almost $6 million in debt and $4 million in equity. Now, so you can say so I was talking about the capital structure. What is capital structure? Capital structure means what percentage of your total assets came from equity and what percentage came from debt, right? And of course, long-term debt, like bonds and mortgage loan, long-term debts, it's slightly, it's not exactly 6 million, but including the short-term debt, that will be like 10 million, right? 6 million together. So once again, capital structure is how much of your total assets came from equity and how much of it came from debt. It can be like 60% equity, 40% debt, 70% equity, 30% debt. But in our example, it is capital structure is skewed more to the debt. So the capital structure is like 60% debt, 40% equity. This is very risky, right? The financial distress from this type of capital structure is very high. They are likely to, they may be, their financial distress means, the higher the financial distress, they are more likely to default. So this is obviously not a very good capital structure, ideal capital structure. But before assets, you have to raise capital, and that's why I'm saying purpose of the purpose of balance sheet is to describe the capital structure. Okay, so we are it's 11:59, 12 o'clock. This is right about time for a break. So let's take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 12:10. Okay, let's reconvene at 12:10.
I apologize for the inconvenience. Battery issues.
Alrighty, we're back. We're back. Now, so I was right before the break. I was talking about the capital structure, right? Um, so yeah. First of all, we need 10 million. We need to raise $10 million. We need to raise $10 million because for what? For the plant and equipment, building and land, which are called, long-term asset or fixed asset or real asset or physical assets, right? These are all, and for manufacturing, it is crucial. It's essential. I mean, without plant and equipment, without fixed assets or real assets or physical assets, there can be no manufacturing. So we raise that capital through debt and equity, right? And first of all, ignore the current liabilities, just long-term debt and equity. Now, basically, short-term debt doesn't go into. I mean, short-term debt is not part of the initial capital. Initial capital mainly comes from equity and long-term debt. So now we go into the. We move on to the equity, right? We move on to the. Now, of course, equity. I'm sorry. We move on to the assets. The assets. The assets break into two categories: long-term assets and short-term assets, right? We already understand what long-term assets are, or fixed physical real assets. It goes by different other names, at least 5 different names, right? Non-current assets, long-term assets, fixed assets, physical assets, and real assets, right? Okay, we move together. Then, what are short-term assets or current assets? Actually, current assets mean liquid assets or financial assets. It's not for assets. Current means rather liquid, rather than long term. I mean, rather than short term. Why? The word current already means running, right? And only the liquid can run, right? Solid matter doesn't run easily, or there's no fluidity in the solid matter, right? So this is solid asset. I mean, fixed assets are like solid matters. They cannot easily liquidate, whereas these assets easily liquidate. Liquidating means turning into cash, converting into cash. And at the beginning of the semester, we probably talked about the liquidity, and that when we were talking about the risk premiums, right? Remember in the last topic, in the topic 1, we talked about 4 different types of risks involved in bond, right? Default risk, inflation risk, interest rate risk, or the maturity risk, right? And liquidity risk. What was the liquidity risk about? The bonds of a less known company or little known company is hard to sell. In other words, it's hard to turn into cash, right? So liquidity means, first of all, liquidity means, the meaning of the liquidity. There are threefold meaning of the liquidity is actually threefold, right? On the most basic layer, right? The meaning, liquidity means how easily you can convert any asset into cash. Okay, that's liquidity. But on the second layer, second level of the meaning, means cash flow. Cash flow. On the third level, and it's also macroeconomic level, liquidity means money supply. Liquidity means money supply. So here, liquid assets, basically means, the first layer of, the first level of, meaning of the word, how easily they can convert into cash. Now, first of all, cash is already cash. I mean, all these, assets are listed in the order of liquidity. I mean, the balance sheet, basically the line items in the balance sheet follow just one simple rule. Liquidity, order of liquidity. Cash, the most liquid. Cash is already cash, so it's the most liquid. Cash equivalents, those are short-term money market instruments that are very low risk and almost certainly almost always give you um, same face value. I mean, in other words, the value doesn't change, right? All financial instruments, basically the valuation changes, valuation fluctuates, but this cash equivalents are hardly very low volatility in its face value. So you can also in our topic 2 folder you will find, right? Topic 2 folder, you will find there's a link about cash equivalents, right? So please, find out, right? There's even a video about it, small video about it, cash equivalents, right? I'm not going to play it now.
Cash and cash equivalent.
You can check it out later, and you should have checked it out already, because we are that topic 2 is behind us already, right? So and then marketable securities. Marketable securities means stocks and bonds. But the stocks and bonds of not your own company, not this company, but the stocks and bonds of other companies. In other words, these marketable securities are the sources of your investment income. You understand? You're holding stocks and bonds of other companies. I mean, it could be treasury. It could be treasury, right? Treasury securities, right? And they are quite, liquid, because you can easily sell those, stocks and bonds and turn them into cash. Now, promissory notes. Promissory notes is part of accounts receivable, but I separated them because accounts receivable in this case means there's a good reason why they are separate. First of all, promissory notes, literally, it means a note, a promise, note of promise that you are going to pay them money. So it's an IOU, right? in essence, is an IOU, but actually, this is more like promissory notes are also called commercial paper. It's called commercial paper. Um, but there's a slight difference in context when it is called commercial paper and when it's called promissory note. Um, but in B2B, business to business, promissory note is most frequently used means of payment. Okay. Now, if you think about it, there are four payment modalities in B2B. So in B2C, there is no such thing as promissory note. Think about it. Um, you can write an IOU and borrow money from your friends or from your family members, but you cannot walk into an Apple store and buy an Apple computer or buy an iPhone with an IOU, right? Isn't that right? That's just the common sense. Why? Because they will laugh at it, right? They will laugh at it. What is this? He said, I, I gingerly and earnestly promise to pay this money in 30 days. Will it? That obviously, they will just laugh at you because personal IOUs are only as good as I mean, it can be circulated within family circle or within very close friends. Uh-huh. But obviously, and it's nothing official. I mean, when you write it, even if you sign it with your blood, it doesn't have any official uh, status. It doesn't have any official power. Why? Um, of course, because um, it's not a legal means of payment. But in B2B, a promissory note is a legal means of payment. And as I said, in B2B, there are four payment modalities. The one, first of all, cash, of course, cash. Second, check, right? Third, credit card. Fourth, promissory notes. And of course, if you're the seller, uh, your order of preference is exactly like that. If you're the seller, you prefer um, cash. Uh, Number two and number three, check or credit card. I mean, they tie pretty much. I mean, uh, maybe credit card would be number two because it's instantaneous, um, and from the seller's perspective. Uh, Check will take about 3 days to 1 week maximum. Um, and then promissory note, uh, from the seller's perspective, you are most reluctant to take the promissory note. So let me use an example. And then for the buyer, it's exactly the opposite. Um, Suppose you are Dell, right? You are Dell, you make computers. And let's say, and Best Buy is your main client, let's say. Best Buy. Of course, retailer, consumer electronics retailer. So, and let's say they are buying 1,000 units of Model X. Okay, 1,000 units of Model X. And your Model X is $300. And that's the price, manufacturer's price. In other words, that's the X factory price. That's the price leaving the factory. Price that leaves the factory. So of course, then Best Buy has to pay. Excuse me. Best Buy has to pay $300,000, right? $300,000, they can pay in cash or by check or by credit card or by promissory note. And most of the times they will pay with promissory note. Why? Because promissory note has, maturity, technically, theoretically, up to ranging between 30 days up to like 270 days. 270 days. But of course, nobody will take promissory notes with maturity of 270 days, because that's almost like not being able to collect $3 million for it was 300,000 in our example, but let's say either 300 or 3 million. If you can't collect it for if you can't receive payment for 270 days, it will be a huge blow to your business. You are most likely to default. You can go bankrupt if you default repeatedly. Now, so basically, if but most of the times, the maturity, most common maturity on the promissory notes are about 30 to 60 days, maximum 60 days, right? Most businesses try to collect it within 45 days. Now, a company like Best Buy, Dell is already a huge, industry giant. Best Buy is also an industry giant. Best Buy is an industry retail giant, and Dell Computer is a manufacturing giant. So a giant corporation like Dell, you might think probably without they may handle. They can do without. They can easily cope with the situation without $300,000 for about 60 days, 90 days. Yeah, because Dell is a giant corporation, they may be able to do that. But even the giant corporations, if they don't collect, if they don't collect the payments, they will run into a cash flow shortage problem. And if they run into cash flow shortage problem, even the industry giants can default and eventually go bankrupt, because they have payments to make, which is called accounts payable, right? Notes payable, interest payment, accrued wages. All these, payments, short-term payments that become due in the short run, they come up, right? They become due every day and every week. So if they don't have enough cash flow to cover that, then that's why Evergrande crisis broke out. Evergrande is barely staving off the crisis, day by day. But they have payments to make every day, every month, and if they cannot cover that with sufficient cash flow, then that's the time they go bankrupt, right? So even the giant corporations it can happen to giant corporations, but most small businesses they are facing this cash flow problem, tight cash flow problem, right, on daily basis. So they want to collect their accounts receivable ASAP, and they want to collect their promissory notes ASAP. Now, but the reason, think about it. I told you the order of preference for buyer order of preference in the payment modality for the buyer is first, promissory note, two, checks, three, a credit card, four, cash. And the order is reversed for the seller. But why would they prefer, promissory note? If that's the payment to make eventually anyway, then wouldn't they? Isn't it better to just pay it off right now? No. Now, suppose in this case, they owe $300,000, 300,000, right? And let's say they paid with the promissory note, 90-day promissory note, 90-day promissory note. And then since sellers are rather reluctant to take promissory note, they usually add interest on the promissory note, right? Think about it. And the interest rate will be something equivalent to the prevailing market interest rate, average going rate in the market. Why? Think about it. If the seller received the cash, right? If they'll receive the cash of 300K right away, then they can put it into a bank at least and earn at least the bank interest rate. So if the bank interest rate is, let's say 3%, of course, all interest rates are annual, right? But just for our thought experiment, just to make it easier, let's assume 3% for 3 months. Then for 3 months they can earn at least $9,000, right? But then by paying with promissory note, right? The buyer paying with the promissory note, the seller will forego that opportunity, right? So the buyer will have to compensate for that loss of opportunity, foregone opportunity. That's why they pay interest on the promissory note, which would be something equivalent to the average market rate. But why would the buyer do that? Why would the Best Buy pay with promissory note, even at the expense of paying 3%? It's because if they know an investment opportunity to earn 10% over 3 months, if their holding period return for 3 months is 10%, and if they have such an investment opportunity, it only makes sense to do that, right? Doesn't it? It only makes sense to do that. By investing that $300,000 for 3 months, and if the return is 10%, right? That's $330,000. So with 10% interest, the promissory note is already paying its interest, paying for itself. The interest for the promissory note is already paying for itself, because the Best Buy will only need to pay 3% interest to Dell, but from the investment they made, they make 10% return. So Best Buy will still have 7% left over, even after pay.
Is that called opportunity cost?
Yeah, of course it is. In a way, this is opportunity cost for Dell, right? If Dell received $300,000 in cash, then they could put it into this stock if they know that, right? They could put it into this stock and they can earn 10%. But since they paid, Best Buy paid with promissory note, they will earn only 3% on it. So the opportunity cost to Dell is the 10%, right? And also on the other hand, from Best Buy's perspective, yeah, they earn 10%. Um, yeah, I mean, opportunity cost in this case is on the side of the seller, Dell, right? It's an opportunity cost. 10% is the opportunity cost to them, right? And the opportunity cost is greater. Of course, if Dell that investment opportunity is both known to both parties, if the information is symmetrical and both parties know that, then it's an opportunity cost to Dell. But let's say information is asymmetric. Most of the times, information is asymmetric. Dell may not know that opportunity, but Best Buy knows that opportunity, right? So that's why they pay. That's why in B2B buyers, prefer to use promissory note, right? Buyers prefer to use promissory note. And even if buying, even if they don't have immediate investment opportunity like that, but still having the use of that $300,000 gives them a leeway, right? If they had paid already $300,000 in cash, they are completely, they don't even have any more opportunities anymore, right? They won't have any more opportunities. So Um, so that's what a promissory note is about, right? And then, but then that doesn't mean they will have to. Let's say so they'll receive the promissory note, a 90-day promissory note, but that doesn't mean they will have to hold on to it for 90 days. In other words, they'll if they hold on to it for 90 days, then they will present it to Best Buy on day 90, right? On the 90th day, they will present it to Best Buy, and they will collect $309,000, right? The maturity value will be $309,000. But if they don't have to wait 3 months, the point is, if they wait, that's fine. But let's say I've been telling you, all business, especially small businesses, are constantly plagued by cash flow shortage. So the minute they receive it, they will take it to the bank and negotiate the sale of the promissory note. Okay, this is called factoring, right? So they can take it to the bank on day 1 or on day 30 or on day 60 or at any point. But of course, they have if they have held it for more than 60 days, then they are not going to, unless it is an emergency, they are not going to sell it to the bank beyond day 60. They have held it until then. Why would? Because if they sell it to the bank, they don't get the full maturity value. They get it discounted. So if they have already held on to it for more than 2/3 of the time, then they are not likely to sell it to the bank because they will lose something because of discounting. So here, I talked about, I mentioned factoring. So we are out of time. So I'm gonna pick it up from there, factoring, in the next class. Okay, so next class will be next Monday. So we're still, but by next Monday, I guess, I hope, we can wrap up everything about topic 2. All right, so I will have to call it a day here and have a good rest of the afternoon, and I will see you guys all on next Monday. Okay, so I'll stop sharing and
All right, next week, Professor. How we going?
You too, Jordan. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye, Kenny. I'll stop recording.
Thank you
And
very
so,
much, Professor.
all right, take care, Jason.